What's going on, everybody? Wesley Shoemaker, Aaron Parker back with you today. It was about the worst case scenario could have gone down in Lubbock, went down this past weekend in Lubbock, and now the Mountaineers are turning their attention to number 7 TCU. So a lot to get into, a lot to talk about. Start here with me. It was ugly on Saturday. Mountaineers couldn't get anything going on offense when they finally got a couple stops on defense in the first half there. JT Daniels and company did them no favors. Injuries piled up. And it felt like any life this team had, it is like it just feels like this team is dead now. And they head into a big homecoming matchup, top 10 team coming in here, and it feels like everyone thinks TCU is going to roll over the Mountaineers. So just Aaron, start with this. Texas Tech, besides obviously how bad it was, just your thoughts kind of into specifics on the game.
This was a very depressing loss, to be quite honest with you. You know, I've seen plenty of no shows, if you will, over the years, and even a couple, well, more than a couple, since 2019. But that one was bad. I mean, 48-10 to an unranked opponent, and Texas Tech is a good football team, but we're not talking about a top 10, top 15 team here. We're talking about an unranked team giving up 48. I mean, what were they, 6 or 7 for 7 on fourth downs before the Mountaineers ever got
I think they started 6 for 6 on fourth down, and then they had that one finally stop where they brought the house. It felt like, and they finally got a stop, but then they couldn't really do anything with it.
It just felt like the Mountaineers never had a chance, and that's not something that should be happening. Especially coming off a big win against Baylor. Just from the get-go, I think in the last podcast, I talked, Mountaineers get off to a bad start, it could have gone ugly, and it got way uglier than I ever imagined. So whatever Texas Tech wanted to do, they did. They ran really fast, up tempo like we expected, but it's almost like WV didn't watch film on them. I know they did, but it didn't look like they did. So just a pretty depressing day all around.
Yeah, I felt like the biggest thing for me was we talked about how whichever team had the best first quarter would win. And it was, I think, 14-3 after the first quarter. And then we also talked about how West Virginia is going to be able to capitalize on Texas Tech mistakes because they're going to run so many plays. They're bound to make mistakes. And let's go back to the third play of the game, I think it was. Aubrey Burks, interceptions in his hands, can't make the play. Fumble on the ground, can't make the play. Another fumble on the ground, can't make the play. Fourth down, you look like you stopped them. You can't finish the play. So the plays were there to be made. And as we said, like, you're going to have to take advantage of when they give that to you. This defense did not. They did not really make a single play all day that was positive, especially in that first half. And the offense, man, they were horrible. They couldn't move the ball 10 yards, it felt like. And I don't know, there was a real questionable call there when it was 4th and 10 at the 29, and you decide to go for it on 4th and 10 when your offense just stalled for 3 plays in a row, and then you have Casey Legg who can kick. Like, I don't know. It was a lot of just parts of that game that were frustrating, that didn't make sense. You kept running wide receiver screens when you had the one that went for 19 yards to Sam James on like the second or third drive of the game. And then after that, you couldn't get more than 1 yard or 2 yards on a screen. So it's more than just players. It has something to do with play calling. It has something to do with just, I felt like once they got down, they just stopped trying. And I mean, big opportunity obviously this week, but it's going to be a tough one if they're going to pull out the win this week against TCU.
Yeah, I mean, TCU is a good football team. On paper, they look better than Texas Tech. Obviously, 2 different teams. I think Texas Tech runs more plays than just about anybody in the nation, but on paper, TCU is better. So it is scary. And especially like you said, the team just kind of looks dead, and that sounds depressing. And it's like they just beat Baylor the week before, but that team did look dead. And now Tony Mathis is out. Charles Woods is playing limited snaps. Gmitter's out. There's a lot of injuries, and a lot of people are down on this football team. So you're going into homecoming week. If there's any life, you got to show it, and you got to show it early, because if you don't if you don't come out ready to play early, I mean, it could be, something like the Texas Tech game where, you fall down early and you got no shot.
Yep. Let's talk about injuries real quick. It's not good if you're a Mountaineer fan. Simply, that's the easiest way to say it. So Tony Mathis, he will be out. CJ Donaldson will get the start. Good for him. Justin Johnson Jr., he got hurt and his status is still up in the air. Offensive line, James Gamitter out again. Wyatt Milam, Brown said he does feel good that Milam will play. Gamitter, I don't think he has a timetable moving forward, which is also not a good sign at all. I bet he's out for possibly the rest of the season at this point. So we only got about a month left. Charles Woods should be able to play, but he'll still be limited. Rashad Ajayi out. McCormick should be back. So still, that's 3 of your cornerbacks right there, and that's hard. Lance Dixon will be out at your spear position. Sean Martin should be closer to 100%. He did not start this week. He did play. He was not himself, though. So that's the big hitters there. Another thing that we should talk about here is JT Daniels. Like, if there's a track record here with TCU and facing backup quarterbacks and a couple dirty hits here, and not saying TCU's dirty, but JT Daniels needs to be on lookout alert, especially with this pieced together offensive line. If TCU starts bringing pressure, because Sonny Dykes yesterday said that they're going to have to bring pressure and make JT Daniels' life uncomfortable and move his platform. And so against this pieced together offensive line, things could get ugly in Morgantown if they're unable to protect him. And he needs to be careful. He's kind of had a couple injuries in the past, obviously. So that's one thing I'm looking out for this week. Is will JT Daniels stay upright and stay healthy this week against TCU?
Yeah, you better hope. You better hope so as a Mountaineer fan. There's, I think last week Jaquay Hubbard and Jordan White got the start, and they're young players, and they've been exposed a couple times, and then even Brandon Yates, he's been here a little bit longer, but at that tackle position, he's let up some sacks over the years. So, you do worry about it. And especially if Milam is playing maybe limited snaps, he's experienced, he's strong, he's talented. So, and then Gamitter's like a 5th-year senior. So, yeah, you do worry about that. And, JT Daniels, while he played a bit, like you can call it what it is, he played a bad game against Texas Tech. But as far as consistency, JT Daniels is one of the best, probably top 5 players on this Mountaineer team as far as consistency. So you don't want to see him go down, especially at home on homecoming, especially the way this team's going right now. You don't want to force in Garrett Green or, a freshman.
Yeah, I mean, I'm worried because they're thin up front. They're thin in the backfield. JT's going to have to throw the ball around a lot, I feel like, this week. I think that's just the personnel that they have this week available. And so you have to play to your personnel. And their personnel is they will have one healthy running back out of their top 3, possibly. They will have at least one offensive lineman out, possibly 2. And they're playing the best team in the conference, a top 10 team in the country, a team that is trying to possibly make it to the college football playoff. They're undefeated. They're 7-0 right now. And I don't think a lot of us had our eyes on TCU as a game that West Virginia could possibly get blown out in at home. But unfortunately for West Virginia, when you're dealing with a guy like Max Duggan on the TCU side, who only has 1 interception the whole year, things could get dicey for the Mountaineers.
Yeah, I mean, TCU is a team that was definitely not on my radar. And there's been a couple of times in our pick'em games where I've said, I'm not a believer in TCU. I don't think Max Duggan can take him to the promised land. And I sound pretty stupid, honestly. I mean, when you look at it, he's been really good. He's been at TCU for at least 3 years, 19 touchdowns compared to 1 pick. Offense is scoring about 44 points a game. Seems very impressive. And I just looked at their schedule. I mean, they've the last 4 games were wins against ranked opponents. Now, obviously the first 2 was Oklahoma and Kansas. They're no longer ranked. So you can take that with a grain of salt, but they're still good football teams. And then, they beat Oklahoma State in double overtime, who I thought is the top of the conference before the season started. And they had another good win last week against Kansas State. So, Sonny Dykes has proven to be a good coach. I mean, he has a good track record with SMU. And I don't know. I guess I didn't think that jump from SMU to TCU would be that smooth in year 1, but credit to him. He's done a great job.
Well, for me, it all starts with Duggan, and Duggan wasn't really supposed to be in this spot. If you really want to be honest here, he got beat for the starting quarterback job after being the starting quarterback the last couple of years because Dykes came over from SMU and he wanted to have a new starter. Sure enough, starter gets hurt. Here comes Max Duggan. And he has, I think, propelled himself into the Heisman conversation. He has definitely earned his shot at possibly being Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. He's lined himself up, and this team is rallying around him. And he can do it in the air. He can do it with his legs. He's so versatile, and he can beat you different ways. And it's just it could be a challenge because let's go back to Kansas, dual threat quarterback there. I'd say Jalen Daniels of Kansas is a lot more explosive than Duggan, but Duggan still has that speed. And the Mountaineers struggled all afternoon. So things there's a lot of negatives coming into this game. I think the biggest problem for the Mountaineers is Max Duggan on that offense with the way your defense has been playing.
Yeah, you make a good point. I mean, he's been very good. I think, maybe my criticism towards him, I've watched a lot of Big 12 football over the past couple of years, and while he's been at TCU for the past, couple of years, I've got to see a good bit of him. And, he showed a lot of flashes, went down to Texas and beat him. I think that was about 2 years ago, played a great game. But he seemed to not really, put it together. He would only have a couple big games per year, and then he looked very vulnerable. But now this year, I mean, it's like he's pieced everything together. He's making hardly any mistakes. So like I said, one pick compared to 19 touchdowns. The Horned Frogs are, putting up 300 passing yards a game. So clearly he's figured something out to where he can be consistent against all Big 12 teams, the ranked ones, the unranked ones, and, home and away, get it done. So that's scary because, even when he was struggling a little bit, I knew the talent was there because of, his dual threat ability. But I thought, I guess I just didn't think he'd put that consistency together, and he's done that so far.
Yeah, let's just talk about passing. 19 touchdowns, 1 interception for Duggan passing, and on the ground he's rushed for almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. So he can beat you both ways. And also Quentin Johnston, he's a dude on the outside. He against Kansas, man, he just torched the Jayhawks. 14 catches, 206 yards, and a touchdown. I was watching that game and I was like, oh my goodness, he is a problem. And so with Charles Woods limited, with this secondary being what it is, I don't know. TCU could hang 50 on the Mountaineers easily. But I also will say this, that the Mountaineers offense, I mean, besides Texas Tech, has shown up in almost, I'd say, every game but Texas Tech. So, I mean, if you want to say they're due, that's a term I think if they're due, this is the spot that they're due in. And so hopefully for the Mountaineers, they get that break on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and I think with, how the team's struggling and with the injuries you got, I mean, that gives chances to a lot of younger guys. I mean, you got CJ Donaldson making the start, and obviously he, hasn't been the same since that Texas game. He hasn't had as many chances since then. Obviously, he's only played in the Texas Tech game, but Jalen Anderson, former 4-star, hasn't ever really got his shot here. Was kind of a late enrollee last year, so was only part of the lifting program. This is his first real season, and has he got much action? No, he really hasn't. Lynn J. Dixon came in from Clemson over the offseason, and he was removed from the team. So, going into the season, I thought Anderson would be either transferring or be the 5th back or something like that. Here we are, homecoming week against number 7, and he's potentially your number 2 back. So you got to like the opportunities for some of these guys, and hopefully there's some guys that have been warming the bench that are maybe younger that have the talent, and maybe they can go prove it now.
And I also keep saying this about the young guys on the defense every week. At some point, they can only go up. I mean, I don't mean that. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just saying that when you're young and you're a true freshman or a redshirt freshman, and your first game action is you're thrust into, and you're facing these top-notch offenses of Kansas and Baylor and Texas Tech, and they're running 100 billion plays and doing things zigzag, up, down. You know what I mean? There's so many things to think about, and at some point, you're just bound to figure it out because there is talent there, and it's just a matter of the talent finally getting to where it needs to be. And I think that 4th quarter against Texas Tech, they played a lot of young kids, and so hopefully that helps. Every minute of experience, every snap helps for these guys, and hopefully at some point it clicks if you're the Mountaineers. And wouldn't this Saturday be a great time to do that? Moving on, let's talk a little bit about kind of just the Big 12 where they are in general. So, little standings update. We'll go 10-1 right now. Iowa State 10, West Virginia 9, Oklahoma 8, Kansas 7, Baylor 6, Texas Tech 5. All those teams are 500 or below in the Big 12. Texas 3-2 at 4, Kansas State 3-1 at 3, Oklahoma State 3-1 at 2, and then TCU is 4-0 at the top of the conference. So everyone besides Texas and Kansas has only played 4 conference games. So still 5 more weeks to determine who will be going to Dallas. But I mean, based on the looks of things for me, I think TCU is probably going to be one of those 2 teams ending up in Dallas. And Oklahoma State beat Texas last week, and then they've got a big one against Kansas State this week. But I don't know. Texas Tech could sneak in there. Baylor could sneak in there. Even Texas could. So a lot of opportunities. Just kind of give your thoughts on the state of the Big 12 right now.
Yeah, it's very up for grabs. I mean, right now you look at TCU and you know they look to be pretty dominant right now. But you know you can't count out the Oklahoma States of the world and even Texas and Kansas State. I kind of like Kansas State. I really thought they'd pull it out against TCU this past weekend. Not Skylar Thompson. He's moved on, but oh shoot, what's their quarterback's name?
Will Howard played.
Yeah, Will Howard. I mean, he came in. He was the starter against WVU in 2020, and he didn't look very good then. So he came in and had a good game. They just couldn't hold on. Adrian Martinez was their starter, and he got hurt. My bad. But you know, Deuce Vaughn, that's a decent team. I thought they pulled it out against TCU.
They were up 28-10, and then just like TCU just stormed back in the second half. And if let's look at TCU's games. I mean, Oklahoma, they blew the doors off the Sooners. I think that was our first revelation of oh my gosh, TCU is legit. But they've had to have some second half comebacks this year. And I think the biggest one obviously was evident this past week. And Sonny Dykes, he acknowledged that. He said, we can't just keep doing this. Obviously, against Oklahoma State, they outscored Oklahoma State 14-0 in the fourth quarter and won by 3 in overtime. So things like this, if you have TCU on the ropes and you can somehow have a lead in the third, fourth quarter, hopefully at some point they can't just keep coming back, because it's hard for teams to come back, especially on the road. And so if you find yourself in a close game or up late, I although TCU's the better team, I just think that at some point something's got to give with all these comebacks they have, and I think that's advantage Mountaineers.
Yeah, you'd think so at some point that, you know, they would bend and eventually break in a game, especially if they're down a couple of scores in the fourth or third quarter. But what that shows me is that shows me a well-coached, resilient football team that's, going out there, and even though they're down a couple of scores late, they're not only hoping to win, they're still really confident that they're going to win. That's something that maybe if you would have asked me before the season, I would have put that on maybe Oklahoma State or Texas or something like that. Maybe not TCU, but credit to Dykes for that. As far as the Big 12 goes, I still like Oklahoma State. I mean, it's hard for me to pick against them. I know they lost to TCU, but that's a road game. Had TCU on the ropes, hung in and beat Texas this past week. They're 6-1. I still like them to make a good shot at redemption, because they came 1 yard, a half yard short of winning the Big 12 last year.
Real quick, I think you just said something, and I think it's very relevant to this West Virginia team. Hoping to win compared to expecting to win. And I think your TCUs of the world, your Oklahoma States of the world, your Texas of the world, they expect to win. And I think West Virginia right now, they hope to win. And to me, that is the biggest difference between the teams that are at the top of this conference and that are in the middle and the bottom of this conference. Is there are 3 or 4 teams that go out each and every week and they expect to win, no matter who the opponent is, no matter where they're playing the game, no matter if it's 30 degrees and snowing or if it's 100 degrees and sunny. And West Virginia does not have a track record right now under Neil Brown that they expect to go win. They are hoping they win Saturday, but I would say if this was under Dana besides 2013, you expect to win a game against a top 10 team that has shown some flaws at homecoming in your own place. And I think that is a problem, how you can't expect to beat good teams in your conference at home. You should win almost all of your home games each year. And West Virginia at this point is hoping just to win against the worst teams in the league. And that's the biggest difference for me when we compare these two programs and these two teams, is the difference between hoping to win and expecting to win.
Yeah, you make a good point. And if you were to ask the coaching staff, they'd probably get mad at you and say, no, we expect to win here at West Virginia. But in reality, you look at the track record and, that doesn't line up. And what you said, I think West Virginia does not have a track record right now under the Neil Brown, era that they expect to win, especially against a top 10 team. And like you said, you made a good point with the Dana Holgerson era. Some of those teams were, kind of, maybe you could say mediocre, 7-5,
I
but
mean,
they
even
were
in
always,
2013, what Oklahoma State came in here, they were what,
yeah,
12th in the country,
they
11th in the
were,
country,
yeah,
and the Mountaineers beat them. 2014, Clint Trickett and those dudes, they beat Baylor, who was number 4 at the time. Like, there's just a difference in defending your home turf
they did.
then to now.
Yeah, no, you make a good point. I was about to throw out that Baylor just a second ago, and then even the worst team under Dana's regime who beat number 11 Oklahoma State. So they did expect to win. Obviously, before Dana, the Rich Rod days and Bill Stewart, they expected to win at home as well. It's just not like that right now. Like you said, in the Big 12 at least, there's always these teams that always have an expectation of winning, no matter who, no matter what the weather, no matter what the time of day. And I put Oklahoma State in that category every year with Mike Gundy. Before this year, I put Oklahoma in that category every year. Down year, everybody left, new administration. I get it. I'll give them a year or two, but for the most part, Oklahoma's right there too, and to a degree, Texas, and just West Virginia is not there right now. That's a sad fact, but it's reality.
And I think for West Virginia, the most disappointing thing from this Texas Tech loss was we talked about it. We felt like this team had turned a corner after Baylor. We felt like, okay, they figured out the blueprint to success, although it might be giving up 500, 600 yards a game. If you can get 2, 3 turnovers here and flip the script there, that's how you win these ball games. And sure enough, the whole team just comes out flat. And I don't know. It's road games are different than home games. I get that, but at some point, there's just like it's just like the same thing over and over again, and it's the same. Oh, this team looks good. They beat a quality, solid opponent in Baylor. They go on the road to a team that has the exact same record as you, and they lay an absolute egg. And it just can't keep happening. And if you lay an egg this week at home, there's going to be a lot of upset people within the program that you're it's going to be hard. You can't go get blown out on your home turf this weekend.
Absolutely not. And I think that's, from my perspective, watching over the years, that's the worst part about this era is the laying an egg and the no-shows. I mean, this team's unranked. Texas Tech was unranked. You're coming off a big win and you no-show and you get beat by 38. I mean, that's embarrassing. Last year against Baylor, you no-show. You get killed. This year, there's already another one. This year, Texas. You go out there and you're down 28 zip. I mean, how many, Oklahoma in 2019? I mean, this is under the same era, and there's way too many no-shows. Kansas State last year, the kind of stormtrooper game. There's too many times where they're out there laying an egg and they're not even giving themselves a chance.
And the
And I
worst
get
part
it.
is they're not laying egg. Like last year, the best team they faced on the road was Oklahoma. They lost by 3, and like it just doesn't make sense. Like how sometimes they show up and sometimes they don't. I don't get how some days are different than others. And yes, I get it's hard to be the exact same and be as good as you were last week, next week, and every week's different. But at some point, something's got to give with this team and something's got to give with this coaching staff because it's been the same guys. This is year 4, and like the clock's about to strike midnight almost because there's only so much time you can give these coaches, give this staff before it's like, okay, we've got to start over because it's obviously just not working.
Yeah, and I think you're right with that. And just like you said, it's a different monster, going on the road. But at some point, complacency is just, it's not good enough. I mean, under this era, the road games. I mean, in 19, I think they won 3, but like TCU was down and they got that win. Kansas was Kansas back then. They weren't, Lance Leipold era Kansas. I think under this era, they've had 4, maybe 5 road Big 12 wins. Is that what we're looking at? Let's see. In 19, there was Kansas State, an upset. They were number 24. Kansas,
TCU.
TCU, 21 at Kansas last year. I can't think of any more.
Last year at TCU as well.
At TCU. Okay, there you go. That's it. TCU, Kansas, and you get one outlier of a ranked Kansas State opponent.
And in 19 they beat TCU on the road as well.
Yeah, I said that one, but that TCU team was
20 in 20 it was no one. And
nobody.
then in 21 it was Kansas TCU. Yep.
And that TCU game, that win prevented TCU from going to a bowl. So not a quality team that year. Kansas was terrible in 19. Kansas wasn't that good in 21. You got to give me a road win every now and then. You know, I know it's hard. I know it's a Big 12, but every now and then you got to expect a road win.
And let's look at these road losses. 38-7 lost to Missouri in 2020. 52-14 lost to Oklahoma in 2019. 52-14 lost to Oklahoma in 2019. 38-17 lost to Texas Tech in 19. In 20, it was the 42-6 game against Iowa State. In 21, it was the 24-3 blowout at home to Oklahoma State. It was also the 45-20 rout on the road against Baylor. And then this year, it's 48-10 at Texas Tech. Like, it's not there. But the one thing I will say, let's just try and get back to this week while we're here, is there's a little bit of pressure on TCU this week, and that they know they have to have this game. They know that on their schedule they still have Baylor, they still have Texas Tech, and they still have Texas following West Virginia in 3 of their final 4 games. And so they have to win this game, because if they lose this game, that's a loss they're not supposed to have heading into the Big 12 title picture. And if you're West Virginia, you're not supposed to win this game. You've got nothing to lose. And so I think playing loose and playing free because you have nothing to lose, compared to TCU possibly having to play a little tight, pressing a little bit when they don't have to if things get close, I think that is also advantage West Virginia.
You make a good point, but with this TCU team, with the wins they've had and what they've shown me, they don't seem like a team that's, how do I say, like maybe holding on for dear life, like, oh, we just, squeak by this game. No, they look like a good football team that's well coached and consistent. I just didn't think that would be TCU coming in, but that's what they show me. So I know it's kind of, maybe you can call it a trap game. WVU is not supposed to contend with TCU. TCU is not supposed to lose this game. It's in Morgantown homecoming. I don't think TCU is going to come out flat, because, I don't know. It's a new era. Gary Patterson was successful there, but I think it was time to move on. And Sonny Dykes is doing a good job. He's got a veteran quarterback that's playing good football, and I don't think they're going to come out flat.
Mountaineers won 4 straight against the Horned Frogs, something to keep in mind. Let's get to picks.
I picked Kansas State to beat TCU, so I'm sure you're still ahead of me.
I am still ahead of you. I have not calculated records, but I went 4-0 last week. You went 3-1. 3 total games on the list this week, 2 outside of our game. First, we'll go Kentucky at Tennessee. I'm going to just take Tennessee. I think Tennessee, things don't look good because they could lose to Georgia and then still not be in the SEC championship, which is bonkers to me. I think divisions are stupid, but that's a different conversation for a different day. I'm going to take Tennessee at home against Kentucky.
Yeah, Tennessee outright on that one. I don't know a ton about Kentucky, but I know Tennessee is really good with Hendon Hooker and that Virginia Tech transfer at receiver. So yeah, I'm going to go them.
And then Oklahoma State, Kansas State. As we were talking about earlier, both teams are 3-1 in the conference. This game is in Manhattan. Kansas State blew a lead last week in a loss, and they're searching. They got to get this win big time, but I'm going to take Oklahoma State. I think their win last week is going to set them on a track to the Big 12 championship.
Now, some important information. Is Adrian Martinez healthy?
I have no idea.
Ooh. Now, I'll go Oklahoma State. If Adrian Martinez is 100%, part of me wants to go Kansas State because it's in Manhattan, but I'll go Cowboys.
And then for our game, you go first on this one, TCU, West Virginia.
Like I said, I don't think TCU is going to come out flat. I don't think they're going to let the whole trap game mindset affect them. I don't think WVU is going to come out and lay an egg. It's at home. They beat Baylor at home a couple weeks ago. I don't think they're going to get enough, going to get it done down the stretch. I think JT is going to be pressured. I don't think he's going to get injured. I hope not. I do think he's going to get pressured, make a couple bad throws. Even if he doesn't make bad throws, I think he'll have to throw it away a couple times on third down. So I think TCU comes in and gets it done. I'm going to say 38-27 24.
West Virginia has no business winning this game, and that's exactly why I think West Virginia does win this game. It's the most West Virginia thing in the world for them to win this game, and I just think somehow, some way they do it. I think JT figures it out. I think this offense is uber productive. I think they're going to be pissed off from last week, and they're going to have a show. I think the 12 o'clock kick does everything but help TCU. They're only an hour back, but still, you're moving your body ahead. And who likes playing at 12 o'clock? Absolutely no one. So West Virginia has no reason to win this game, and that's exactly why they're going to win this game. I think the Mountaineers win 38-37.
That's an interesting pick. And, I think you're right. It is the most West Virginia thing ever. And maybe it'll, I don't know. Maybe
we're sitting down here in a few days here saying somehow, some way West Virginia shocked the world. Game information, it will be on ESPN at noon. Homecoming, come out, support the Mountaineers if you guys want. I have no reason or no stake in this, so do what you want. I'm just doing my job here. So hopefully,
be a true fan and come out.
Hopefully Milan's rocking. Hopefully it's a good time, and hopefully if you're a Mountaineer fan, the Mountaineers win. But we will have to see. So that is it for today. If you made it this far, we do appreciate you listening. I'm Wesley Shoemaker, joined by Aaron Parker. If you like this content and want to see more, read more, be sure to head over to bluegoldsports.com. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and this is the Blue Gold Sports Podcast.